wanted to talk about how Amish preachers are ordained. Being ordained a preacher is the biggest fear of most Amish guys after they get married. There's nothing you can do to avoid it. You can't opt out of it. You don't choose to be a preacher. Once you're ordained, it's for the rest of your life. When I was a kid, our deacon, Yuri Mullet, died, and they had to ordain a new deacon, and that was the first time I watched them ordain a minister or deacon. They send everybody out of the house, and then usually they have like an open window or something, and everybody lines up and votes. In this case, they voted by this open window, and then somebody wrote the votes down on the inside. And any married man who received more than 2 votes was put in the lot. And then everybody filed back into the house to resume the ceremony, and they had 7 of these hymn books lined up with string around them, and there was a piece of paper in one of them at page 770 by the Loblied. And then the bishop reads out loud, there were 7 men who received more than 2 votes, and he reads their name, and they all file up and sit on an empty bench. And then one by one, they go up and they choose a book from any point in those 7 books. They can choose from the middle, from either side. The theory is that God will choose them to pick the right book, and the right person will become preacher, the person that he so chooses. There's been stories about a person grabbing a book, putting it back down, grabbing another one, and then he was the preacher. And the same story with grabbing the other one and leaving the one that would have made him a preacher. And then one by one, the bishop filed down the row, opening the books and looking for the piece of paper. When he got to Alvin Raber, he said, I have found it in Alvin Raber's book. And immediately Alvin Raber's wife started bawling at the top of her lungs from across the room. It's a burden. So Alvin had to learn all the rules of being a deacon within the first 2 weeks. He doesn't get paid for any of this, and it's a lifelong position. And he was my deacon growing up, and he was always fair. Ordaining a preacher is the same thing, and then ordaining a bishop is the same, except you can only vote for a preacher. A bishop can only be ordained from an existing preacher. The deacon is the one who handles the claims of wrongdoing, and he handles the financial help people need. The bishop is the only one who has the power to officiate a wedding, a baptism, ordain a preacher, or a funeral. Most Amish preachers and elders are good people, and they do what they do out of a sense of duty, not out of trying to be mean. The single biggest fear I ever had about staying Amish was becoming a preacher after I would get married. I have a question. How do they determine who the bishop is, and is there a limit on his time as one? No, a bishop or any elder's term is forever. It's a lifetime or appointment when they are ordained. So the full quota of elders in an Amish church is 1 bishop, 2 preachers, and a deacon. In some cases, I have heard of the deacon becoming ordained a preacher, but most of the time when they go to ordain a preacher, the bishop will say, the deacon is fine in his place, meaning don't vote for him. But there has been cases where he hasn't said that, and they did vote for him, and he became the new preacher, and then they had to ordain a new deacon as well. But to ordain a bishop, so if you have a new church, this district that's starting out, in our community they split all the time because they get too large. So the new district will form, they'll start ordaining preachers and deacons, and once they have 3 preachers, they will ordain a bishop in that church, or in that district. And each district gets its own bishop. The bishop is ordained out of one of those 3 preachers, and those are the only 3 that they can vote for, the members of the church. And then they'll, usually all 3 of them get enough votes, you know, so it's usually a 1 in 3 chance. I've done a video on how the process works to ordain a preacher or any elder, so feel free to go check it out. It might be down there a little bit, but hopefully with a little scrolling you'll be able to find it. Thank you. Have a good day.